Thank you, councillors, for that. So we go to the penultimate item on the agenda today, and the last one is just an information one, so that finishing line is in sight, believe it or not, folks. So this one is item 12. It is to do with the Auckland Integrated Transport Plan being progressed by Mayor Brown and the Minister of Transport. Mayor Brown, I understand you're going to introduce this item and speak to the paper.
I am, thank you. I've been punished severely by being made number 12, but I've accepted my punishment. As Nicole this morning from Wakakotahi said, there are lots of players in the Auckland transport network scene. Ministry of Transport, Treasury, Wakakotahi, it goes on. And lots of plans have been prepared, but no overall plan. There are people, and so the lack of existence of the Auckland Integrated Transport Plan is what has brought this paper about. This will inform the debate about light rail, the harbour crossing, port, the coastal shipping, and a whole other bunch of things, as well as public transport. As a result of this, both myself and the Minister of Transport have agreed on the need for a broader plan to future-proof Auckland with a high-quality, joined-up transport system which more closely integrates decision-making on cars, buses, trains, ferries, cyclists, pedestrians, freight, passenger rail, light rail, the port and coastal shipping, which also should have been written in there. This includes considering steps to address immediate and pressing needs as well as long-term city shaping initiatives. The scope has been confirmed by a negotiation between the Mayor, my staff and the Minister's staff to meet both of our priorities. In summary, the Transport Plan directs on work on 4 main elements: the long-term strategic integrated view of transport needs in Auckland, present an integrated network showing how all transport modes will work together, including freight, which seems to have been forgotten a bit, provide commentary on the implications of consolidating and moving the Auckland port, details of a 3 to 10 year capital program. The process of developing the plan will involve myself and the Minister jointly providing direction at key points along the way. And I propose setting up a political reference group comprising of relevant councillors that I can consult directly with in advance of these meetings between myself and the Minister, who will also have his group. The plan needs to be agreed by May to meet government timeframes, so the process must be nimble. Especially you've noted that other groups are rushing out to consultation without realising really whether they actually have a part in the long-term plan. However, I expect the plan will be workshopped with councillors where possible. I'll take on board what I've heard from all councillors, and I expect other councillors on the political reference group to do the same thing. And you have had with you the paper, which I believe answers most of the questions. So if there's any, Megan is going to be the council representative to speak to this, who I'll be working closely with.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Megan has joined the table to ask her any questions with respect of this item from an officer point of view. Councillor Walker, you appear to be the only person asking a question.
I mean, I've just got a quick question. It goes to the presentation earlier on today where there was a plan presented, which was the 2012 to 2042 Auckland Plan, including a strategic transport network. And I refer you also to the Sir Dovemeyer Robinson Plan that was remarkably similar to this, that was developed, if I recall, back in the 1970s. So it is not as though we have not had a plan and not had a plan that was actually capable of being delivered. I would suggest that within the scope, absolutely, there needs to be prioritisation. So I have a question as to whether that is implicit within the scope, because you can have a plan as big as Ben Hur, but we need to get on with finishing the stuff that we've already started. Thank you.
I hear that loud and clear. There have been other plans. One thing Auckland is capable of is producing plans. Implementing them, we've fallen short. And the plans have never quite covered everything, including freight, the port, coastal shipping, heavy rail. It was one of the few countries in the world that didn't build heavy rail in the last 15 years for some reason. And we tend to have had plans dominated by somebody suddenly thinking, oh, we need a bridge, or suddenly we need something new like rail, or suddenly we need something else. The plans have been driven by politics rather than practicalities. And so this is going to have a crack at, and we will utilise all of those excellent plans from the past. So we'll just put them in a mixer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a couple more questions. Councillor Darby and Dalton. Councillor Darby.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, I have to admit I'm a little bit confused as to what the Integrated Transport Plan is, because I mean I'm also aware we've got a raft of plans that they sit under a construct of a planning framework, and then that helps inform your regional land transport plan, and that's where you specify, you know, your objectives and your delivery. So as we unpack this, I'm going to be really intrigued as to what actually is missing, because there's mention of not addressing freight, but there is, of course, a freight plan that sits there. There's cycling plans, there's asset management plans, there's arterial road plans, and the list goes on, and they all contribute to that overarching planning framework. And I'm intrigued by sort of what the nub of the problem is, rather than saying there isn't an integrated plan. But look, we need to get there. Mayor, I'm also intrigued by the scope. The scope has been signed off by you and the minister. Has the minister had it signed off by cabinet? Do we know whether he's had it signed off by cabinet, or is it not something that needs to go to cabinet? Because it doesn't have a sign off by Auckland Council, by us. We're just noting it today. So is there not an expectation that we should be looking at the scope together, which we haven't done, and then collectively signing it off, which is what you do with ATAP and everything else? Question for you there, Mayor.
This is kind of like ATAP plus, actually. ATAP was heading in that direction some years ago, but it kind of stalled somewhere. In terms of, I don't know whether the minister has had it to the cabinet, but the minister and I have agreed we'll get on with this. Whatever comes out of it will have to go to both the governing body and the cabinet. But at the moment, in order to get on with things, part of it is there is a rush to do other things. There is a rush to finish. We've got people working on a harbour crossing. We've got people working on light rail. None of those things have been done in conjunction with everything else. It's a bit like the cycleway plan. We've got a lot of plans, and it's just we're not rewriting them. We're trying to bring them together and put them into an order. The ATAP used to be able to do that, is to give some priority to, in a planned way, to expenditure on transport. But it's been hurdled by politics. I think there has been a very loud cry from the public that Auckland wants to have a bit more say in what goes into Auckland rather than Wellington.
Okay,
yeah. Both the additional harbour crossing and the Auckland Light Rail project are mentioned in the Auckland ATAP, and they're both mentioned in the Regional Land Transport Plan as well. Megan, are you on the call? Are you on this call? A question for the Chief of Strategy, if she's available, Chair.
Yes, she's there.
Thank you. Megan, what's the involvement of, I can see mention of Auckland Transport being involved to date. What's the involvement to date and likely involvement in the future of our Transport Strategy Unit within Council?
Through the chair, kia ora, Councillor Darby. Yes, look, we're all involved, so all the ATAP parties are, so including Auckland Council and our transport strategy team. At this stage, of course, the scope has been done, as the Mayor has said, through the offices of the Mayor and the Minister. We're now working together in order to provide some information to the first meeting of the Mayor and Minister in a couple of weeks' time. And we're doing that across all the ATAP partners, Waka Kotahi, Ministry of Transport, Auckland Transport and Auckland Council.
So are you confirming that the Transport Strategy Unit has not informed the scope?
I'm just saying that the scope was developed through the offices of the Mayor and the Minister.
Okay, you're diplomatic. Good. That's good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dolphin.
Thank you, Chair Watson. My question relates to the political reference group, and it might be something that we're going to come up against through this term. This is a very important piece of work, and because the majority of chairs and appointments to CCOs and appointments to Auckland Transport Board are men, we are going to be missing gender equity. If we look at this particular group here, without IMSB in there, I think we've got 5 men, 2 women. So as we go through these important pieces of work, how are we going to ensure that we get a balance? There was a report put out by the Ministry of Transport a couple of years ago talking specifically to the inequity around this piece, was specifically around public transport, and the inequity for women, for transgender, from minority groups who weren't getting a voice or getting served. So the importance of having those voices in these direction setting committees that have such an influence on the future of our city. My question is, how do we ensure that we keep that balance? So we keep I'm only speaking from a woman's perspective. I'm sure there'll be councillors who want to speak from a Māori Pacifica perspective as well. Thank you.
Perhaps I should call on Megan to answer that, who is definitely a woman.
Through the chair, Councillor Dalton, that is a good point. I think it ultimately does come to the decision on who would be on this political working group. So you have the recommendation in front of you. Unless there's a decision to change those members, that's what will happen for this particular project. And again, as with your colleagues around the table, you will need to make some decisions about how you want to proceed through this term to try and get a certain level of equity or representation in these kinds of groups.
Thank you for answering that, Megan. I appreciate that.
Okay, we've got Councillor Newman and finish with Councillor Hills.
Megan, thank you. I come from the perspective of being from my Marae Papakura Ward councillor hat, and I just want to understand there are some projects that have been very, very long standing in ATAP, which were then moved to NZ Up, but seem to have died. And I refer, of course, to the Mill Road corridor. So I want to understand, how does this particular piece of work enable us to get that particular project and potentially other projects which have lost favour because of the reprioritisation under NZ Up back into the plan, noting that they may well be priorities for a revised GPS next year, and that we've got to have something that is sufficiently resilient to withstand whatever happens in October.
Through the chair, I'm happy to help answer that, Mayor Brown, and then if you wanted to add. So I think there's possibly 2 ways here. The first is at the higher level about the integrated network, as the Mayor has said, and so it could well be projects that are part of that important part of the network that need to be perhaps highlighted or re-highlighted through that. The second element then is the shorter term 3 to 10 year plan, like the ATAP, so that's a funded and committed and prioritised list, and that's another way that those kinds of projects could be seen and then look to be funded or constructed over that time period.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Councillor Hills?
Thank you, Chair. And I would consider, if the Mayor would consider thinking about adding Councillor Dalton, and I was disappointed to see a councillor laughing at Councillor Dalton's question, because I think it's quite important what she said. My question to you, Chair, or maybe to Megan, is around how climate change will be taken seriously through this. So we've obviously got our own transport emissions reduction plan, the government's emissions reduction plan, and obviously what we've seen over the last 3 weeks is catastrophic climate change, which has happened, but also that we need to be resilient, so both reducing our emissions and adapting to it. Can I assume or be assured that this will be taken as a priority as we had in the last term?
I think my understanding is that we're not questioning that part of it. We're just questioning which of the things fit together in the best way to deliver the actual transport network. The requirement to meet the consider the climate changes across all forms of transport and all forms of decision making. But if, for instance, there's a decision that the port will move in a certain period of time, that will have an impact right across the district that possibly hasn't been thought of so far. And so it's more about that. There's no intention to reduce the focus on the climate, and we've had a big reminder of that just recently. But it's about considering all of the things which are floating around, not just things that have popped up for largely political reasons. Okay? And if anything, I'd rather reduce the numbers of people on the thing rather than increase it. The whole point of having a committee is to have a committee. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to suggest a practical solution for the male domination on the political working party, and that would be to add the Deputy Chair of the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee. Because when I was Deputy Chair of Planning, we had the same issue. It was all men and all our political working groups. And then it was just adding me as the deputy to kind of have that gender balance. So that's what I was hoping could be done. It seems an easy solution. And then I also wanted to know, where does the TERP, how does the TERP integrate into this Auckland Integrated Transport Plan? I would have thought it was a major component of it. These are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to pick those up, Megan?
Through the Chair, happy to pick up the TERP one. So, Councillor Bartley, as the Mayor has said, climate change is one of the key elements to consider with Auckland's future transport plan. And so for Auckland Council, that includes the Transport Emission Reduction Plan and Te Tarakia Tāwhiri, our climate plan. We also know the government, of course, has got a government policy statement which has just recently come out, and climate is the key focus in that. So again, these are matters that need to be considered by the Mayor and the Minister as to how that is outworked into the future network and into those more short-term 3 to 10 year prioritised lists.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Is that okay, Councillor Bartley? Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Answer my question. Yeah, I suppose.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
And then in terms of putting Angela on?
Well, I guess that's a matter for the Mayor. There is the recommendations here. Mr. Mayor, do you want to answer that or just leave it to the debate?
In my view, there's already too many on it, actually. I'd rather reduce the number. The point is that I am meeting the Minister one-on-one with this. And so we're trying to, this is not an effort to change the gender balance in it. I mean, we've just had a whole lot of men show up for Auckland Transport. That didn't seem to be a problem. So Well, yeah, I mean, that would strike me that those people are there all the time. This is for 1 month. Perhaps we should look at questioning Auckland Transport. Then maybe I'll tell you what, I'll put that in as part of the things we're discussing. Why aren't there more women at the top of Auckland Transport? There you go. But I'd like to put the motion, request to put the motion and get on with it.
Okay, so I'll move the recommendation be seconded by the Mayor. It's now open for discussion or debate. Is there anyone who wants to speak to it?
Yeah, I will. No one else has put their hand up there. Look, just on that question, so Mayor, I probably need to express I'm disappointed that you haven't included the Deputy Chair. For the reasons of gender equity, yes, and they've been well outlined by Councillor Dalton. But we're dealing with transport infrastructure that cannot be dislocated from land use planning. And so we've got Councillor Hills there. Councillor Dalton has been leading the future development strategy work, is very experienced in the planning area coming into this. And I think there's a risk that we start to see transport increasingly like it's just about catching train, bus, ferry, car, whatever it is, and not relating it to the land use implications. And this is somewhere where I thought we'd advanced tremendously, but if we go back to just engineering our way out of this challenge, then we will go back to the 60s. And I think that's a real risk. But look, Mayor, we've given you the opportunity to include somebody to make sure that there was a bit more thinking around land use, and you've declined it, which is really disappointing. It's not the size. It's definitely not the size. It's actually about the quality of the people you have around that table who can enter that inquiry, test things, rebut things, challenge, offer, etc. And I think Councillor Dalton would have been a tremendous plus at that table. But I just totally don't get why that opportunity has been spurned.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Darby. Councillor Lee, you want to contribute to this?
We're not setting up a committee here, I understand. We have quite a few of them. I'm sure the members of all those committees have in some ways a relationship to transport. And so theoretically, we can have all of them on that committee, but then getting everyone in the same room, in other words, another governing body, doesn't really make sense. Or a committee of the whole doesn't make sense. We have a committee of the whole here, the Transport Committee. I understand this working group will report to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee. So I think we need to keep things in proportion here if this thing is going to work. It's a novel approach. It's part of the Mayor's mandate and initiative, and I'm quite happy to help if I can.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. I'd just like to express my disappointment that we haven't been able to add the Deputy Chair of the Planning, Environment and Parks Committee. I think others have outlined really good reasons why she'd be a great addition. I did just want to note that no one is seeking a committee of the whole in this place for the political reference group, and to characterise adding one person as that is inaccurate. I'd also note that often on political reference groups, they are larger and they include representatives from local boards, which is not the case with this one, and I understand why it's not the case. But I understand the sense that a smaller number is more efficient, but in this case I feel it would be losing some real value at the table, making it smaller for no good reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferry. Councillor Walker.
I'm more than happy with the number of people on it. I wouldn't mind being on it myself. I'm sure any number of us might. I have absolute trust in those people there. I'm absolutely confident on the Mayor's part and others that the lines of communication will be open and there will be feedback. I'm sure I'll be listened to and other councillors. I don't doubt that there are expenditure issues that Maurice Williamson might want to take up. Obviously, we've got to fund things. It's going to come back to the governing body. Everybody's on that. For goodness sake, we need to get on with things and we need to reduce the number of people involved with things to make haste. There are enough things for us to be involved with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Walker. It's been moved, it's been seconded. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against?
Aye.
Against? Okay, one against. Okay, I declared that carried. Thank you. We now move to the last item of the day, which is, thank goodness, is a information report. Moved by Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Any discussion? No, thank you. All those in favour say aye.
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 Receiving the report. Against? Carried. And there is no extraordinary business. I'd just like to conclude by thanking everyone for your assistance today, getting through what was a big agenda and a lot of very significant matters, of which we will be sure to be hearing more over the course of 2023. Thank you, and have a well-deserved rest, everyone, especially you, Barry.